So the mold remediator will come in, the environmentalist will test and say there's no mold. But what they haven't done is test for the chemical toxin that the mold left behind. And that is much more dangerous than the mold. And some estimates, quick Google searches will show you that about 40% of the population, it's estimated, has one of a few genetic conditions that essentially make it so that their body can't detox, that when they get exposure to these toxins, all the natural processes that our body has to break these toxins down and get them out, they can't get them out.
Welcome to CREPN Radio for influential commercial real estate professionals who work with investors, buyers, and sellers of commercial real estate coast to coast. Whether you're an investor, broker, lender, property manager, attorney, or accountant, we're here to learn from the experts.
Welcome to Commercial Real Estate Pro Network's CREPN Radio. Thanks for joining us. My name is J. Darren Gross. This is the podcast focused on commercial real estate investment and risk management strategies. Weekly, we have conversations with commercial real estate investors and professionals who provide their experience and insight to help you grow your real estate portfolio. Today's interview is sponsored by Building Insurance and Risk. When you invest in real estate, it pays to work with a real estate investor protection specialist to protect yourself and your investment from catastrophic loss. The experts at Building Insurance and Risk focus on real estate investor protection. They provide you with multiple insurance coverage offers and a side-by-side coverage comparison. To learn more, go to buildinginsurancerisk.com. Today, my guest is Seth Jones. Seth is the CEO of Hygia Living Corp, where he and his team have developed Superstratum, the first patent-pending process to remove mycotoxins from homes. And in just a minute, we're going to speak with Seth Jones about building-related illnesses and the impact and what you can do. But first, a quick reminder, if you like our show, CREPN Radio, there are a couple things you can do to help us out. You can like, share, and subscribe. And as always, we encourage you to leave a comment. We love to hear from our listeners. Also, if you want to see how handsome our guests are, be sure to check out our YouTube channel. You can find us on YouTube at Commercial Real Estate Pro Network. And while you're there, please subscribe. With that, I want to welcome my guest, Seth Jones. Welcome to CREPN Radio.
Thank you very much. Happy to be here.
Well, I'm looking forward to our conversation. But before we get started, if you could take just a minute and share with the listeners a little bit about your background.
Absolutely. My background is, as some would say, diverse. I grew up in Louisiana. My dad owned a construction company, so in summers, I spent time on construction sites and watching homes being built. But I kind of took a little bit of a left turn, and from Louisiana, I moved up to Nashville, Tennessee, and I went to a school there and started a band, and that band got a record deal, and I left that band, and then I became a songwriter, and that kind of led to the next 15 or so years of my life, writing songs and making music and traveling the world, which was a lot of fun. And I wound up living in Los Angeles, California. I was actually at that, I did a lot of different types of music. I started in a rock band, and then I wrote country music for a publisher in Nashville, and then I started doing a lot of, I wound up doing a lot of music in Europe. And through that process, I became a DJ. And so I was in Los Angeles, and I was a touring DJ, and we were having a lot of fun. And kind of through that process, I had a group of kind of business and marketing guys that I was friends with. And in that group, met a guy rather, a chemist who had developed a very unique polymer coating technology that was a mold resistant film. And it lasted for, in what he claimed 25 years, and it could get wet and all these different things. It would never wash away. And my partner and I looked into it and found out that this was legit. This chemist had a pretty long career. So anyway, to make a long story short, we raised some money, we purchased that IP, and we started what is now the Hygia Living Corp. When we began our brand Superstratum. So this was actually the first Superstratum product. It's now our endurance coating. We've developed that technology into our endurance coating. But that was kind of I was actually still DJing at the time, and I didn't quite understand what I was doing when I started the company. And over a handful of years, it made a full transition out. Now I still have I like to do music for fun. But we've been building this company for the last few years as we entered into this space of our environments from a health perspective with this technology. And it was kind of like peeling back an onion. As we got into these different industries, we discovered, I would say, and we weren't the first ones to discover this, but we developed a solution for it. We discovered kind of the conspiracy of ignorance that has led to really an epidemic, a health epidemic.
I love the backstory there, and I'm looking forward to getting more into this. So, just as a kind of a starting point, I'm wondering if we can't get into a little bit about the building related illness, and kind of define that and talk a little bit about that. What can you
Absolutely.
tell us what building related illness refers
Certainly.
to?
Yeah. So building related illness is a pretty broad umbrella term that the EPA coined. And essentially what it means is an illness, a disease, that could be a mental illness, any illness that's caused by a contaminant inside of a building. Now, there's a sister term called sick building syndrome, which the EPA also came up with. It's a little bit more popular. Sick building syndrome just means symptoms that are correlated to time spent in a building. So that term essentially means someone is sick when they're in a building, but there's no known cause within that building. So it's a little bit of a mystery, that sick building syndrome. It really kind of is mysterious because they don't know what causes it. Building related illness is when there's a direct cause from something in that building. This was part of kind of the aha moment is we realized that all building related illness, all sick building syndrome is really just building related illness. There was just a contaminant in our buildings that we're unaware of.
Got it. So, how long has this been a recognized issue?
It started in the 90s. There were some pretty significant, actually, I think up in the Pacific Northwest, there was a case. I think it was a Legionnaire's case. It was something in a building where it was kind of the first time there was a mass sickness event in a building. And, the EPA, of course, came in and started doing writing and research. But to zoom out a little bit more, this is not a problem that human beings have had for the majority of society. I mean, to some degree, right? In the Bible, there's protocols on how to deal with mold inside of buildings and those sorts of things. But it got particularly bad when in the 70s, after the energy crisis, we began changing the way we built our buildings. And everyone knows this. You see a building being built and it's being wrapped in plastic, and every nook and cranny is sealed off. And that's for energy efficiency. Of course, it has driven down our energy cost. But there was it was a lever. And when we pulled on one side, what happened is we began trapping the air inside of our buildings. So when moisture got into those buildings, and we could talk for 2 hours about the ways that happens, right? But when that happens, mold grows. And we know this, right? We know that mold is a problem, and most people know that it makes us sick. But what we didn't understand is that when mold grows, it has a defense mechanism. It's a organism that's trying to survive like every organism, and the way that it fights is with a poison, and that poison is are called mycotoxins. And there's various types of mycotoxins, and mycotoxins they've been very well studied within the agriculture and food industries. They're heavily regulated because they're carcinogenic. We know what happens when we ingest mycotoxins. In fact, the WHO estimates that 25% of the world's foodstuffs have mycotoxins in them. And people who know these illnesses and go to these doctors who treat them, that's one of the first things they do is they get them off the foods that tend to develop these toxins, because fungus grow in the storage facilities or when the moisture content gets too high. So we understand mycotoxins from that perspective, but And today, doctors who treat toxicity, they're ubiquitous. Everyone has them. There's mold and mycotoxins are the most common thing that you find in chronic illness. So we saw that and kind of thought, well, this exposure it's not just happening through the food. We know that these types of molds grow in indoor environments. And we came at it from the chemical perspective. Our R&D team and our scientific team and chief science officer is a chemist. So rather than microbiology, we said, well, what's happening chemically? And what we realized is these indoor molds are producing mycotoxins, and these mycotoxins are becoming airborne. And even worse, you can remove the mold from a building, as we do when we get mold. We call a mold remediator, and they come out to remove that mold. But often, as they're removing that mold, or previous, as that mold has been growing and competing in that environment, it has been releasing mycotoxins, or it releases them as it's dying. So the mold remediator will come in, the environmentalist will test and say there's no mold. But what they haven't done is test for the chemical toxin that the mold left behind. And that is much more dangerous than the mold. And some estimates, quick Google searches will show you that about 40% of the population, it's estimated, has one of a few genetic conditions that essentially make it so that their body can't detox. That when they get exposure to these toxins, all the natural processes that our body has to break these toxins down and get them out, they can't get them out. And so it leads to inflammation. It leads to mental illness because they cross the blood-brain barrier. It can lead to all sorts of things that you would never associate, are coming. And because these toxins are odorless, because mold tests can't find them, because they're too small to be captured by filters, because traditional cleaning chemicals and all the things that kill mold don't destroy the toxin, what has happened is, according to the US government, about 50% of all the homes and offices in the United States have the conditions that create this building toxicity. And it's counterintuitive. In some of the worst cases, they're new buildings because those buildings, right, are sealed the tightest. They may have other VOC issues. There's things going on. So yeah, building related illness is a term that most people are not familiar with. But when you consider how widespread that term is and what's happening within our buildings, it's something I can guarantee is touching everyone's life, whether it's a contributing factor to their ongoing chronic illness that they can't get a hold of, the gut issues, the allergies, on and on and on, or whether it's someone, in their immediate family, someone in their immediate circle. It is incredibly common. And I believe that it's one of the primary drivers, and there are others, lots of ways, that we get toxicity in our environments. But this idea that our lived spaces have become essentially poisonous petri dishes, I believe, is one of the primary reasons that in 1958, only 5% of the population had a chronic illness or an allergy. And today, every estimate puts that above 50%, 1 in 2 people. So it's a fundamental problem in our living.
Well, that's a pretty big, broad problem there, and I mean, it makes sense. I mean, the fact that we've worked so hard to you know minimize the energy use in our construction, where we've eliminated all the airflow, molds kind of gotten out of control. I guess the question I wanted to ask you is, so mold is the I guess the host for the mycotoxins. Is that accurate?
It creates it.
Creates
So
it.
it's like a weapon. Think of it like
Uh,
little arrows or grenades that it creates and leaves, like landmines, leaves behind.
So when you remove the mold, what I heard you say is that the mycotoxins haven't necessarily been removed.
Correct.
So how do we remove the mycotoxins?
Well, that eventually became the goal of Superstratum when we realized, okay, there's a whole issue with mold, right? But the real issue is that people were getting mold remediation going back into their homes and they felt even sicker or more depressed or more anxious and that was because of this problem, the mycotoxins. So at Superstratum, we created what we call it's a 3-phase system that revolves around 3 different chemistries. but it is a DIY building envelope cleaning process. It's meant to be done after mold remediation or when you're trying to do a very deep detoxification of a home. And it's about a 2-day process, but homeowners can, we have a piece of software on our website. They can enter in their home details and it creates a custom order of the products that they need and instructions on how to do this process in their home. So there are professional, we have a Hygia Cleaning is our professional service company. So we do this cleaning in buildings professionally or larger homes. But it's a process that's also meant to be, available to the DIY customer who wants to do it themselves. So that right now is the best solution. We were the first company to create that solution. It's built off the backbone of some research that we did with a laboratory, a mycotoxin laboratory, and some researchers. The problem with mycotoxins, and when we got into the chemical industry, we found this. There are some particularly difficult things to clean in the environmental space. Fentanyl and methamphetamine, that's difficult to clean. But mycotoxins is particularly difficult because these chemicals are just incredibly resilient and they're very sticky. They stay in a building in some cases years, even after the mold is gone. So our building cleaner, which is a special type of hypochlorous acid, we demonstrated that on contact, we can destroy 95% of mycotoxins. And that's something that hydrogen peroxides, bleaches, all the cleaning chemicals that you would buy as disinfectants to kill bacteria and mold and those types of things, they won't break down the toxins. And so they're not adequate for that large cohort of sensitized people. So the solution, as we believe, we're the first ones to market with a solution. And there may be others in the future, but we're very confident in our solution because not only is it effective, we've demonstrated that in third-party, lab results, but also with our customers over and over. But these chemicals are very safe for people who have sensitivities, and those are our customers. They're people who've been going to the doctor for years. They're people who are extremely sensitive to these chemicals. So much so that most people in their life think they're crazy. So the Superstratum, is what we developed when we discovered that this mycotoxin problem was really the thing that we needed to deliver the solution for.
So do the mycotoxins, do they grow? Do they continue to populate, or are they simply a byproduct of the mold?
They're simply a byproduct.
Okay, so it's not, if you're infected with the mycotoxins, it's not a matter of that you could be overrun by them, meaning that they would continue to grow. But the fact is there is a problem that if you're sensitive to it, that needs to be addressed. And I mean, I say if you're sensitive to it, I mean, obviously you never know who could enter the property or the home, but
Yeah.
so so let me ask you this. So somebody has a mold situation, the mold remediation contractor comes in, they give you the bill of health, check, you're all good. They leave. Is there a way to test for the mycotoxins if you're not sensitive to it, to determine if you have them?
Yes, there are. We actually, if you go to the Hygia.life, or this is the website where people can find out more about this. Hygia.life/CREPN. We'll have a little form there, and we have a test actually that we're just launching right now, and it's a very simple and affordable detection test. It's a simple mold tape and a mycotoxin swab. And it can be very expensive to get an environmentalist out to do this type of testing because especially on the mycotoxin side, the testing is new. There are not a lot of labs that do it, and most of those labs are biological labs that are doing mycotoxins. So we have worked with a very reputable lab. We've got a very simple and affordable test just to determine, do I have this problem? And then if you do, you can find out more. So yes, our test is what I would recommend, the Hygia Living. It's called the Mold and Mycotoxin Detection Kit. And like I said, they can find it at that website.
Got it. And does it give instant results, or is this something you take a sample and send it in?
Yep. There's two little samples in there. You take the tape, you put it on some dust, and then you swab an area, put them back in the containers. And there's a prepaid envelope. You drop it in the envelope, and it sends to the lab, and you get the results in about 48 hours.
Huh. Sounds pretty efficient. That's good. So we've talked about mold and the mycotoxins. We've essentially acknowledged that the construction methods are largely the um, I guess the cause. Is there anything else that's causing this, or is this just a matter of the airflow and just the lack of airflow that's caused the mold to grow and then the mycotoxins?
There are a lot of things that are contributing. What has made it so bad is the way we build the buildings to trap the air in. But there are other ways that we build buildings that contribute to this. As trusses get dropped off at a job site and they lay out in the mud, a lot of buildings have mold growing in them before they're even finished. And I know a lot of home builders that have mold remediators that they work with on every job because they have to remediate the home before someone even moves in. So, when you have these kinds of problems developing, like there's a lot of reasons why this happens. But it's largely unawareness. And I'm sure we're going to move into the conversation of risk here, but there's not a lot of liability in this space. That is changing very quickly. And that I think is kind of the message for property owners. And as tenants become more aware, as this kind of discoveries we're having it in real time. I work very closely with some very large attorneys who are working on some very big cases that could be landmark cases, in this regard when it comes to property development and property ownership and these types of things. So, I think that that's important to. I think that that's important to kind of be aware of as this unfolds. That's the real implication.
Got it. So the expanding liability, I mean that sounds you know, problematic just from a standpoint of if you have a need to create more housing and you continue to create the housing in a way that creates a mold. I mean, it just seems like it's an evil vicious cycle kind of thing. Is there anything being addressed that you're aware of with the construction methods in an effort to, I mean, if that's essentially where the genesis of this mold problem has come from, is the air tightness. Is there anything that you're aware of that's being done to recognize and minimize the the environment for the mold to grow?
Largely no. Um, Largely no. That is, now we developed a solution for that, and that's really what began our company. Our endurance coating product that I mentioned earlier was developed by a chemist that kind of had a very unique background, and he combined some things together to create a novel coating technology. And this coating, our endurance coating, can be sprayed onto virtually any surface, indoor or outdoor. It creates an invisible barrier that doesn't change. It's permeable. It doesn't seal off any air or anything like that. You don't know that it's there. But in an outdoor application, it'll last for about 2 years. So, like up there where you are, in Portland, you could spray it on your siding or your sidewalk, and you're not going to have that mold or algae or mildew grow. But inside of a home, when it's in a stud cavity, it can last for 25 years. When we apply professionally, we give a 15-year warranty on it. And it can get wet hundreds of times, not wash away, and you won't get growth on the surface of that coating. So, one of the ways that we utilize that outside of its place within our whole home system, our detoxification process, is on new construction. It's a great product to, as the house is going up, you're framing the house, you can spray. It's definitely, we recommend that kind of people spray the framing and the joist and all the structural wood. But you can spray drywall, carpet. I mean, you can put it on the subfloor. We can put it everywhere, and that's peace of mind that that house floods, if there's a leak, you're not going to have mold grow because how these problems develop is they're maintenance issues. And nobody's trying to hurt anybody or do anything wrong for the most part. What happens is you're trying to maintain a property and it was built incorrectly or someone didn't disclose something. And that's a lot of the times what happens when people, take over properties. Someone lied in disclosure. They had mold remediation. They didn't do it properly and a toxic building got created and you have no way of knowing. So, that I think is, yeah, I think that's important for people to recognize.
Yeah. No, I would think that most people are trying to operate on the up and up and not create a problem.
No,
When you hire somebody that says they're going to do something, how do you know they're not doing it if you're not the expert yet? That's why you hired somebody to do it. Um, but this whole mold thing is kind of it's just a scary thing in that it's so kind of omnipresent.
yeah.
And these mycotoxins, I guess, is really where are they the cause, the source, the what people are actually getting sick from, or is the mold causing, or does the mold make people sick,
They both
or
do.
is it both?
Yeah.
Both, okay.
And often what happens in a building, buildings that have mycotoxins have had mold or have mold, certainly. Not all mold creates mycotoxins. You can have mold in a home and not have mycotoxins. Mold makes mycotoxins to fight its enemy, which is bacteria. And we use some of these mycotoxins like penicillin or mycophenolic acid. These are mycotoxins that mold creates that we use to kill bacteria. So depending on that particular environment, you may or may not have both. But when the way that mold can affect the body is mold can colonize the body. So though mycotoxins don't regenerate, mold that grows in the body will create mycotoxins inside of the body and generate them. And that's very common. Most people don't realize how common it is. Most people have mold. Honestly, if you wake up every morning and you have congestion, you most likely have mold in your sinuses. So mold does get in the body, but mycotoxins we can get through exposure from the air. And when they get trapped inside of buildings and HVAC circulates them, or especially some of the worst cases that I see is when there's mold growing on the coils of the HVAC unit and it's just circulating that air. And when the mold is growing in a crawl space and the stack effect is pushing the air into the house, it's difficult sometimes to see those problems because it's not a big flood or a leak. They can persist, but they cause some of the worst health effects. And these are just things that people aren't aware of. And in many cases, I see we have a lot of people who realize this, but they don't own their properties. They're renters, and so they come to us and they know that their home is making them sick, sometimes making them extremely sick, but they don't have the information or they can't communicate to the property owner, or the property owner doesn't, there's no real liability, there's no way to tie it back. And so they're looking for those, solutions. So there's some easy things that people can do just in terms of your maintenance, in terms of how you're taking care of a home to greatly reduce, the likelihood that someone could be getting sick in a property. One of those is regular HVAC cleaning. Making sure the coils are clean, making sure you're doing that on a regular basis, that condensate line is not backing up, you're not getting moisture issues there. That's one of the worst ways. And then the crawl spaces and basements. People don't understand that 70% of the air we breathe comes up from our crawl spaces, comes up from under our house. So when you have mold growing in a musty crawl space, it usually is creating mycotoxins. Now, there may be some filtering happening as that air is coming up through the home and all the mold and that musty smell is not getting into the home. But what is getting into the home are the toxins. So making sure, you have properly addressed water issues on your property. That's the main issue, is water. If you're controlling water, then you're not going to have these issues on an ongoing basis. But if you do have ongoing water damage issues, it's the repetitive nature of the water damage that causes mold to generate these toxins. So those are the environments that become toxic. And as the government says, that's about 50% of all the buildings in the United States have ongoing water damage issues.
Yeah. No, it's a little overwhelming, when you recognize just the power of water and how it's able to, once it escapes the boundaries of where you want it to go, uh, it's kind of a bad deal. Um, so the construction is kind of the issue that the you know we get water, we get mold, we get mycotoxins. Um, as far as your product and your application, um, what percentage do you find is being used in personal residences versus in more of a commercial application, i.e., multifamily or office space?
We sell almost exclusively to residential, because our customers are people who are sick and who know they're sick, and it's their home and they're motivated to fix the problem. We work very closely with the healthcare industry, with a lot of doctors and clinics who treat these kinds of illnesses. So our company, serves that person, that residence. And I would include in that there are definitely property owners, who single family homes and that sort of thing, who want to make sure their homes are safe for their tenants, or, they discover a problem and they want to fix the problem the right way. I believe that, over the next 5, certainly to 10 years, but I'd say 5 to 7 years, I think that the landscape around liability is going to change. There are some organizations who are pushing some bills through in different states, and there are some very high profile within the government and the military issues around mold and these toxins. And there are a lot of legal cases that are kind of on the horizon as well. And I think it kind of takes one tobacco case, within this industry to really change. And because, it's a little ironic, and I tell people just to try and paint the picture, when we want to study mycotoxins, we have to work with a lab that has to work with the Department of Defense in order to get the controls. They have to have background checks. They have to be a level 1 biolab. That's because these toxins are so dangerous. They're bioweapons. They're heavily regulated within our food. If you're a rice farmer and you get moisture content above 12%, you throw your rice out, right? However, there are no acceptable levels within buildings. There is no awareness about these toxins in buildings. And as I, say a little crudely to people, when you eat something, right, that goes into your body a certain way. But when you really want to get a chemical into your body, you don't eat it. What do? You smoke it. You breathe it into your lungs. And that's what's happening. And, that's the exposure that we're getting. So it's it's a little funny right now that this is really like a calm before a storm, so to speak, where there's not a lot of noise and there's not a lot of liability, but that's just because there's no awareness. And who the group that's driving the awareness right now are actually the people who are sick, because they're beginning to realize what's making them sick. That's driving companies like us to develop solutions. It's driving, attorneys into the space looking for some of these large judgments, and it's driving innovation. But it's going to require a tremendous amount of innovation across industries, to really fix this problem. But it starts with awareness.
Yeah, I was curious. You mentioned the test that you have available. Do you have any sense on the stats of the percentage of tests that come back positive for mycotoxins?
That is a great question, and I ask it to every lab that I meet and I talk to, because, I want to know that too. The short answer is I don't. I get various answers. Sometimes I've gotten them from almost all to, half. And then there's a lot that goes into that too, right? The mold and the mycotoxins, there's more context to it. I think that the best indicator is water damage. So, looking at half of the homes, it's in my best estimation, it's half. Have some level of toxins in them. Now, that doesn't mean that the people living in that home are all sick, or all experience those, because that's one of the difficult, confusing things about these toxins. They don't affect everyone the same. They're very bio-individual based off of genetics and lifestyle and prior exposures and diet and all those sorts of things. So you might have someone who's literally on death's door in a building from that air, and then someone else who maybe can't sleep or wakes up with the stuff he knows. We see that often. So yeah, it's changing quickly.
Well, and I would guess just based on the population and the people that are aware of your product and your company that they've been seeking a solution, that the people that are submitting a test, the percentage would be fairly high, I would think.
Yep.
Um,
Yes.
as opposed to just across the spectrum of properties where nobody's complaining, having or I'd say complaining, nobody's suffering from any kind of effects of the
Yep.
building, and you had that building tested. I would guess you would. I'm not saying you wouldn't find it, but I would assume that just by the basis of no contributing, um, nobody's noticing anything, and that the likelihood would be less there than it would be where somebody's noticing something's not right.
Yep.
But anyway,
Exactly.
um, well, this is fascinating and scary all at the same time. I mean, it's yeah, I think I remember that it's probably been like 30 years ago, the first time, maybe more than that, the first time I remember seeing some sort of an expose on 60 Minutes about a house where people, it was mold, and you know, everybody was like, it's just mold, wipe it off, Um, but people actually being so physically sick that they couldn't live in the home kind of thing.
Yeah.
And and the correlation back to the building practices, um, you know, I it's I mean, there is a cause and effect, and here's the effect and the downside. Um, so people have mold, mycotoxins. If they're being affected, they can um, you know, work with you and your company, uh, get the testing, get the uh, the solution to the mycotoxins. When people have used your products and they've cleaned it, what are we seeing? Are people feeling, oh my God, it's relief? Is it slightly better? Can you tell a little bit about that?
Yeah. Um, we have it's that's frankly the most rewarding kind of part of what we're doing. Our company is extremely mission focused, um, largely because we've all had this issue ourselves. We've all have some pretty interesting stories, and every day I talk to people who, have some of the most crazy health journeys that you've heard. But um, it really is that for us. It's the people who call into us and they say, "Oh, I thought this was going to be difficult to do. I ordered the product and I did it, and I haven't slept 7 hours and whatever, or this happened." Or, in many cases, we work with people who some of the worst stories. And this is really tough when you have somebody that's called and they said, "I've spent $150,000 remediating my home. My wife is living in a hotel and my kid can't go inside without having a panic attack, and I'm out of money and I'm upside down on the house and I can't sell it now and I don't know what to do." So many people are in that situation, and we know that our solution works, and we've built it over the last 4 years. Some of these pieces have been in development over 10 years, and so to be able to give that solution to somebody, to have them call and to say, "This is what happened. I can go back into my house. This condition reversed. This condition got better." We hear that on a regular basis. Now, what we're doing, and I can kind of maybe leave you with this. What we are doing is we're healing the environment. What is happening to people is that environment now that is free of those of that mold, it needs to be free of the mold and free of the toxins. It's now the body can begin the processes of healing. And that can happen overnight in many cases, because when you have even small amounts of these toxins in a building, for someone who's sensitized, I mean, they could have crazy anxiety or depression. And the simplest way that I say for people is, when you go on vacation, do you feel better? Do you get your energy back? Do you come back to life? And then when you go home again, do you kind of go back into your symptoms? Does your skin get bad again? To your gut? Like, that is telling you that there's something in that building that's causing that. So we don't understand the way our buildings are affecting us. So when we do simple things sometimes, like clean the dust, clean the HVAC, or run the Superstratum whole home system and detoxify the building, it's very common for us to see people just bounce right back, especially when many of those people who've been sick for a long time, they're doing a lot of the things the right way to make themselves healthy, but they never get healthy because they're living in an environment that's literally poisoning them. So in many cases, changing that environment for someone, which we can do in about 2 days, or which someone else can do to their own home in about 2 days, that can radically, improve their health.
Got it. Hey, Seth, if we could, I'd like to shift gears here for a second. Um, by day, I'm an insurance broker, and as such, I work with my clients to assess risk and determine what to do with the risk. And there's three strategies we typically consider. We first look to see if there's a way we can avoid the risk, and that's not an option. We look to see if there's a way we can minimize the risk. And if we cannot avoid nor minimize the risk, we look to see if we can transfer the risk. And that's what an insurance policy is. It's a risk transfer vehicle. And as such, I like to ask my guests if they can look at their own situation. It could be your clients, um, the government, the atmosphere, the building, construction methods, whatever it is that you identify and consider to be the biggest risk. And again, for clarification, while I am an insurance broker, I'm not necessarily looking for an insurance related answer. And so if you're willing, I'd like to ask you, Seth Jones, what is the biggest risk?
Well, I have what I think is an interesting answer, because being in the space of health and chemicals, regulation and compliance is from the federal government is a huge risk. And that was always the biggest risk of our company, especially because we set out to do something different, new. It was extremely high risk when we started for many reasons, many reasons as all startups are, but particularly because we were entering, a highly regulated space and trying to do something a little bit different. And that risk, actually, we had the EPA shut us down last year in December, after about 3 years of building the company. And they shut us down for what they deemed compliance issues with certain things we were saying on our labels. And that's because the EPA regulates very tightly anything related to mold, bacteria, any chemicals that you use to mitigate what they deem are pests. And there was no awareness about mycotoxins, and there were no products, no registrations, no acceptable levels, very little information even out there about mycotoxins. And I had hired all sorts of consultants and attorneys to try and guide us and tell us, help show me where that risk was, and then so I could make a decision on how to position our products and our company within that landscape of risk. But what I found out was they were not, well, let me say it a little bit differently. No one really understood that landscape. And I had to learn it myself the hard way. So the biggest risk for us, I would say, there's a lot of risk, but that's, whether it's the biggest, it was the most pertinent to us because it wound up, actually being an issue that we navigated successfully through. And through that process, we wound up de-risking our company, because now we know the regulators and we've shook their hands and they've told us what's acceptable. We were able to ask those questions, and that has given us a much clearer path forward, in terms of, how we speak to customers, how the EPA, essentially wants us to behave and what they want us to say and where they want us to stay out of, without, certain registrations and things. So yeah, I would say that would be the biggest risk.
That's awesome. Hey, Seth, where can listeners go if they'd like to learn more or connect with you?
Absolutely. So your listeners can go to our website, hygia.life/CREPN. And you'll find a little bit of information there. We'll have the test there, so if they're interested in getting the test, but that's a good place to go. If they want to find out more about Superstratum and our mycotoxin products, they can go to superstratum.co. And we've got lots of information there about mycotoxins and the different products that we make. And so, yeah, a lot that they can do there. So you can go to hygia.live/CREPN or superstratum.co.
Got it. Seth Jones, I can't say thanks enough for taking the time to talk. I've learned a lot, enjoyed it, and look forward to doing it again soon.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me on. It's been a pleasure.
All right. For our listeners, if you like this episode, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Remember, the more you know, the more you grow. That's all we've got this week. Till next time. Thanks for listening to Commercial Real Estate Pro Network's CREPN Radio.
You're listening to CREPN Radio for influential commercial real estate professionals. For more information on this or any of our guests, like us on Facebook, CREPN Radio.